Imagine the North Atlantic, a sea so merciless that waves tower like buildings and ice forms instantly on ropes and sails. The year is 1000 CE, and a Viking longship cuts through this frozen expanse, unarmed with heaters, fire, or any conventional warmth. You might think survival in these conditions would be impossible, yet these Vikings weren't just surviving, they were thriving, conquering lands and navigating waters that would kill a modern sailor in hours. How? The answer isn't fire, it's engineering, strategy, and an almost forgotten genius that has puzzled archaeologists for centuries. Let's start with the basic fact. Viking ships had no heating, not a single hearth, brazier, or stove. Archaeological excavations in Roskilde Fjord, Denmark, uncovered 5 Viking vessels from as early as 1000 CE, and not one contained fire equipment. The Oseberg ship, the Gokstad ship, even modern sonar scans of recovered vessels reveal the same pattern: no onboard heating. And it wasn't because Vikings didn't know how to use fire. On land, they built elaborate longhouses with central hearths, advanced heating systems, and carefully designed fireplaces. The technology existed, they chose not to bring it to sea. Why? Because fire on a Viking ship was not just impractical, it was suicidal. These vessels were clinker-built, constructed from overlapping wooden planks sealed with tar, stuffed with wool and animal hair. The sails were thick wool, treated with animal fat for water resistance, the ropes waterproofed with pine pitch. Essentially, the entire ship was a flammable box. A single spark could engulf the ship in under 4 minutes. There were no enclosed spaces, no fire breaks, no way to contain a blaze. And when you're in the middle of the freezing North Atlantic, jumping overboard isn't an option. You'd freeze almost instantly. Fire was the enemy of survival. So Vikings made a choice: comfort or safety. They eliminated fire and accepted the cold because the alternative was losing the ship entirely. But rejecting fire posed a massive problem. How do you survive extreme cold without burning fuel? Here's where the ingenuity begins. Vikings mastered clothing in ways that modern science is only now rediscovering. Excavations from Greenland show a sophisticated layered wool system designed to insulate even when wet. They didn't rely on a single garment. Multiple layers had distinct functions, some for wind resistance, some for insulation, some for moisture management. Every day, women crew members would seal sleeve cuffs with bone needles and waxed thread, creating airtight seals at the wrists. This wasn't decorative, it was survival technology. And when necessary, sailors could cut themselves free with specialized knives. But clothing alone couldn't solve everything. Sleep is crucial. Moving generates body heat, but eventually you must rest. Vikings engineered the ultimate solution: communal sleeping systems. They used waterproof skin bags, essentially two-person sleeping bags made from sheepskin with fur linings. The principle was simple but brilliant: compound body heat. 2 people together retained 15 to 20 degrees more warmth than alone. Sailors were paired strategically. One body kept the bag warm while the other kept watch. Platforms above the coldest parts of the boat maximized insulation, and lowered sails created tent-like structures trapping heat from dozens of bodies. Status didn't matter. Everyone shared the same sleeping system. Surviving the cold also demanded calories, but cooking on board wasn't possible. Vikings solved this with pre-prepared food. Dried fish, hard biscuits with nuts and seeds, nutrient-rich cold porridge. They engineered meals that could withstand long voyages in freezing conditions. Every detail, from grain to fat content, was calculated to maintain energy and generate body heat. Archaeological finds at York confirm ships stopped provisions for months at sea, supplying 2,000 to 3,000 calories daily, enough to sustain the crew without fire. But Vikings didn't just rely on clothing, sleeping systems, and food. Their survival was integrated with shore infrastructure. Over 200 harbor sites from Norway to Newfoundland reveal carefully planned winter camps with hearths, workshops, and family accommodations. Ships weren't continuously at sea. They rotated voyages to maximize shore contact. On shore, fire and heat were abundant. Ships were the mobile part of a larger ecosystem designed to survive the harsh North Atlantic. Even mental strategies were part of the survival system. Over 50 Viking camps have yielded more than 300 gaming pieces, dice, and carved entertainment objects. These weren't just for fun, they were psychological tools to maintain morale in brutal conditions. Archaeologists confirm that social activity directly affects physical endurance and body temperature, a principle we now call psychological thermogenesis. Vikings intuitively applied it centuries before modern science. Now, let's talk about speed. Without heating equipment, Viking ships were lighter, faster, and more maneuverable. Speed wasn't just a tactical advantage for raids, it was survival. Faster ships could escape storms, navigate treacherous waters, and outrun enemy fleets. Eliminating onboard fire reduced cargo weight and fire risk simultaneously. Every design choice served multiple survival and operational functions. A real-world experiment in 2007 tested these strategies. Researchers built a reconstruction of a Gokstad-type ship and sailed it from Roskilde to Dublin, adhering strictly to historical Viking methods. No heaters, no modern tricks, just proper clothing, communal sleeping, and pre-prepared food. The crew survived extended cold water sailing with core body temperatures safely maintained, proving these techniques were not myths, they were practical engineering solutions. But there's another layer of genius: coordination. Watch rotations ensured a constant supply of warmth in sleeping areas. Clothing adjustments and sealings were daily rituals. Meal preparation on shore was synchronized with voyage schedules. Ship design, weight distribution, and sleeping arrangements all interacted with weather windows. This was sophisticated systems-level planning. Vikings weren't merely tough. They were strategic engineers. Compare this with Mediterranean civilizations. By 600 CE, Byzantine and Roman ships had onboard heating, chimneys, and galley areas. But these systems were heavy, slow, and vulnerable in northern waters. Viking choices reflect environmental adaptation rather than technological deficiency. They chose mobility and safety over comfort. This is a profound insight. Intelligence and survival aren't about what you can do, but what you choose not to do. Archaeology supports this everywhere. The Oseberg ship, the Gokstad ship, the Roskilde reconstructions, all evidence shows zero onboard heating. Clothing remnants, preserved textiles, and sagas confirm detailed, repeated strategies for cold weather survival. Food caches, sleeping systems, and shore infrastructure reveal a holistic approach to life at sea. Vikings optimized every element to work in concert: environment, social cooperation, material technology, and timing. Even leadership and hierarchy were adapted to these survival priorities. Ship captains didn't reserve comfort for themselves. Resources were allocated based on survival needs. Every sailor, from lowest rower to highest noble, used the same sleeping systems, layered clothing, and caloric rations. Survival requirements overrode social hierarchy, a revolutionary approach in medieval Europe. Vikings also used ship design cleverly. Clinker-built hulls with overlapping planks were not just seaworthy. They were lightweight, fast, and resilient. Ships were shallow drafted for rivers and deep waters, maximizing access while maintaining stability. Platforms and sail designs integrated with sleeping arrangements created microclimates. Every inch of the vessel served multiple functions: transport, shelter, insulation, and combat readiness. Psychology played a role in navigation too. Long journeys demanded confidence, planning, and mental resilience. Crews used storytelling, games, and rituals to maintain focus and morale. Social cohesion wasn't incidental, it was essential survival technology. Teams that maintained morale could endure longer voyages and harsher storms. Those that failed risked death by exposure or poor decision-making. Food systems were meticulously designed. Cold porridge, dried fish, and preserved dairy weren't just convenient, they were scientifically effective. High-calorie, long shelf-life food allowed sustained energy production, even when extreme cold increased metabolic demand. Pre-prepared meals reduced the need for onboard heat while providing constant fuel for body warmth. Every voyage had timing considerations. Winter sailing was avoided when possible. Seasonal weather windows were carefully observed. Ships returned to safe harbors for resupply, maintenance, and crew rest. No element of survival was left to chance. This strategic integration of environment, infrastructure, and human behavior created a resilient maritime culture capable of transatlantic voyages centuries before Columbus. Vikings understood the balance between mobility, safety, and crew welfare. Eliminating fire reduced risk, increased speed, and allowed greater cargo capacity. Clothing and sleeping systems maintained core temperatures. Food provisions sustained energy. Shore infrastructure and social strategies amplified all of these effects. The result was a system optimized for cold water dominance, elegantly simple yet profoundly effective. Even their societal innovations reflect this logic. Communal responsibility, coordinated labor, and collective survival were embedded in daily routines. Every decision, from ship design to personal clothing, reflected systemic thinking. Vikings didn't just endure the cold, they transformed it into a strategic advantage, turning environmental hazards into opportunities for conquest and trade. By rejecting onboard fire, Vikings created a culture of discipline, ingenuity, and cooperation. Their success wasn't brute force, it was sophisticated problem-solving. This approach enabled them to reach North America 500 years before Columbus, establish trade networks from Greenland to Constantinople, and dominate medieval Europe through maritime strategy. Their ships weren't just vessels, they were floating systems of survival, engineering, and human ingenuity. Next time you reach for your car heater or warm jacket, remember this: Vikings consciously rejected comfort to maximize operational efficiency. They engineered warmth through clothing, sleeping arrangements, food, and social cooperation. They turned necessity into innovation, danger into strategy, and survival into conquest. The story of Vikings at sea challenges our assumptions. It's not about heroism and suffering, it's about calculated adaptation. These seafaring warriors didn't just brave the cold, they reimagined what survival could mean. They designed a holistic system that balanced environmental, physical, and psychological factors to create unmatched resilience. Their genius lies not in fire or brute strength, but in understanding the full system: human, vessel, food, clothing, and shore infrastructure, all coordinated for survival. This is the real story of how Vikings conquered icy seas without fire, not through courage alone, but through systemic intelligence, strategic innovation, and human ingenuity. They engineered around the cold, optimized every factor, and created a culture where survival, speed, and safety triumphed over individual comfort. It's a lesson that resonates even today. True innovation isn't what you add, it's what you choose to leave behind. And that's the brutal truth. Vikings didn't just survive, they thrived.